The story begins during a sudden earthquake in Japan. A young man sacrifices himself to push a little girl out of the path of falling debris. Crushed beneath the rubble, he reflects on his impending death. Finally understanding the protective instinct his parents felt when they perished the same way, instead of the afterlife, he awakens to a blinding white light. Opening his eyes, he is bewildered to see his own tiny hands and the face of his supposedly deceased father leaning over him. A weeping woman gently cradles him, affectionately naming him Kai and thanking him for being born. Utterly confused, Kai touches his face and realizes he has been reincarnated as an infant, feeling as though time has magically turned back. The touching moment is cut short when his mother weakly grasps her husband's hand, addressing him as Akihiko, and pleads with him to protect their newborn. An exorcist suddenly steps forward, instructing the father to step back so a spirit-sealing ritual can commence. The infant looks around, noticing the room is filled with solemn figures seated in a circle, and feels deeply unsettled by the heavy atmosphere. One of the exorcists gravely reminds Akihiko of their grim duty. The man explains that since ancient times, catastrophic disasters have been the work of malicious entities. To protect humanity from further devastation, they must seal the most powerful of these threats, the demon god Duma, inside the newborn's body. Despite agonizing protests over the terrible price of the ritual, the father is restrained by attendants. With a final, sorrowful apology, he releases his wife's hand. As a glowing star-shaped formation appears beneath them to start the dangerous summoning, the mother tearfully begs her son for forgiveness, leaving the baby completely stunned. Suddenly, a dark energy engulfs Kai. A sinister voice echoes from within the shadows, mocking the infant's unnatural awareness. The entity, identifying itself as Duma, declares its intent to take over the child's body and forces him to watch as a deadly curse begins to drain his mother's life. Horrified by the prospect of losing his parents again so soon after reuniting, Kai flashes back to his past life. He recalls the agonizing day of his parents' funeral, overhearing mourners pity him and his younger sibling for being left behind after their mother died saving a stranger. Overcome with grief, the young boy had desperately opened the coffin's viewing window, weeping and questioning why his parents had abandoned them. Snapping back to the present, Kai refuses to let history repeat itself. As the black energy swirls around him, he fights back with sheer willpower, absolutely determined to protect his mother this time. Miraculously, he manages to push back against the dark entity, leaving the demon completely stunned by the baby's immense mental fortitude. The room erupts in shock as the deadly curse suddenly dissipates. Akihiko rushes to his wife's side, frantically checking if she is unharmed. She confirms she is safe, though she can still sense the dark magic successfully sealed within their son. The ritual worked, yet the fatal price was somehow bypassed. An elder, Lord Akaike, stands up in utter disbelief, calling the situation unprecedented. He explains that a baby possessed by an evil spirit is biologically wired to curse and kill its own mother, especially when dealing with a supreme threat like Duma. Fearing the infant might violently erupt with uncontrollable hidden power at any moment, the elder demands the child be disposed of immediately. However, Akihiko fiercely steps in, vehemently refusing to let anyone harm his son. Infuriated by Akaike's suggestion to eliminate him, Duma violently erupts, sending a terrifying dark aura spiraling through the entire room. Panic spreads among the exorcists as they brace for an attack. Duma threatens to destroy them all, but Kai firmly orders him to stop. Instantly, the dark energy is suppressed back inside his body. Duma is left utterly baffled, unable to comprehend why his overwhelming power cannot dominate a mere newborn. Meanwhile, Kai realizes that his own willpower is strong enough to easily control Duma's rampages. Refusing to back down, Akaike stakes his life on his demand to execute Kai, but Akihiko adamantly rejects the proposal. Gonzeon steps in to mediate the escalating argument. He reminds the council of the traditional summoning customs, explaining that they are obligated to observe Kai for 7 years until the curse enters dormancy. Akaike bitterly accuses Ganzan of going soft since having a daughter, but he calmly advises Akaike to cast aside his personal feelings. Later, while Kai rests, Duma pesters him telepathically. Annoyed by the constant chatter in his head, Kai ignores him. Realizing this is no ordinary infant mind, Duma questions his true identity. Their mental standoff is interrupted when Akihiko returns to the room after dismissing the council. She quickly confides in him, revealing that she sensed a fleeting burst of light magic coming from Kai just as the dark aura vanished. Akihiko admits he felt it too, noting that it is completely unheard of for someone to possess both light and dark magical attributes simultaneously. He realizes Kai might grow up to become someone truly extraordinary. 4 years pass peacefully. A television news broadcast reports on a recent spirit attack, praising the quick response of local exorcists in preventing major damage, and reminding the public to remain vigilant against supernatural threats. Kai currently lives in an alternate version of Tokyo, a world entirely ruled by magic where humanity constantly battles against supernatural threats known as spirit demons. While watching the news, Akihiko playfully teases his son about his intense obsession with exorcist broadcasts. Kai proudly points out their family's legacy, declaring his ambition to study hard and become a great protector just like his parents. Sitting down beside him, Akihiko gently warns the boy about the lethal dangers of their profession, hoping to deter him from such a perilous path. However, Kai remains steadfast, expressing his desire to grow strong enough to protect his family when the time comes. Feigning distraction to avoid further lectures, he quickly excuses himself to go play outside. As the boy heads out, his mother spots him and warmly tells him to be careful in the garden. Watching him leave, Akihiko expresses relief at his son's innocent behavior. He admits to his wife that he constantly worries the boy feels overly pressured by their heavy reputation as one of the 7 great exorcist families. Meanwhile, Kai crosses the garden pond, ensuring he is completely hidden from the house. Duma telepathically interrupts his solitude, teasingly asking if he is about to repeat his daily secret routine. The demon god playfully threatens to take over his body again, prompting an annoyed sigh from Kai. He casually brushes off the threat, reminding the entity that he can suppress her possession attempts almost unconsciously now. Yielding to the boy's impenetrable willpower, Duma physically manifests outside his body, taking the surprising form of a young human girl. She smirks at him, quickly warning Kai not to get too arrogant, just because his resistance has improved since infancy. Reflecting on their bizarre dynamic, Kai recalls the sheer number of possession attempts he has endured over the years. Since infancy, Duma would use any ridiculous excuse like having a full stomach or just being bored to try and seize control of his body. Even during mundane moments like learning to crawl, she would constantly pester him. However, Kai grew entirely accustomed to repelling her petty advances, and he happily points out that her attempts have decreased recently. Duma quickly scoffs at his optimism, vowing to strike the moment he shows a sign of weakness. Despite her tough talk, she holds his legs steady while he practices his sit-ups, even scolding him for messing up his tempo. Amused by the irony, Kai points out that for someone constantly threatening to steal his body, she is surprisingly helpful. Duma stubbornly denies assisting him, claiming she is merely waiting for him to exhaust himself so she can finally take over. Ignoring her excuses, Kai sincerely thanks her for the company. He confesses to feeling lonely and frustrated by his inability to control his magic properly. Since he strictly hides his physical training to avoid worrying his parents, having her around makes the grueling workouts bearable. Visibly conflicted by his genuine gratitude, Duma falls silent. Moving on to push-ups, Kai playfully complains about how distracting and heavy she is while applying extra pressure to his back. Suddenly, Duma claps a hand over his mouth, commanding absolute silence. Sensing immediate danger, she drops her voice to a whisper and warns him that they are being watched. Following her sharp gaze toward the nearby bushes, Kai realizes a surveillance Shikigami is spying on them, leaving him intensely wondering who sent the magical tracker and why. Duma casually explains that the surveillance Shikigami was likely sent by someone who participated in the sealing ritual. She notes that the unseen master must be fascinated by his incredibly unique existence, as he completely avoided the fatal curse and retained his self-awareness while harboring her soul. Kai mentally complains that the spy's monitoring frequency has drastically increased lately, turning into a daily annoyance. Changing the subject, she teasingly reminds him about his upcoming magic power measurement test the next day, hinting that the spy's reaction to the results will be highly entertaining. The following day, Kai and Akihiko meet with a physician to discuss the test results. The man gravely explains that the boy's magic power is completely unmeasurable. He details how the testing reagent usually changes color to indicate power levels, with red being a 1 in 10 million rarity. However, the child's sample remained entirely colorless and transparent, leading the physician to conclude his magic is virtually zero. Since magical potential is typically locked in by age 3, the diagnosis is considered final. Devastated, Kai assumes he has absolutely no talent and can never become an exorcist. Ignoring his father's desperate protest that there must be another explanation, he runs away into the forest to process his heartbreak. Unbeknownst to him, the Shikigami silently tracks his every move. Inside his mind, Duma bursts into laughter, highly amused by the adult's massive misunderstanding of his true abilities. Before she can accidentally reveal too much, Kai telepathically interrupts, asking if the spy is still watching. She confirms the stalker's presence, noting that the hidden master has definitely heard the heartbreaking zero magic diagnosis. Duma explains that the Shikigami's master falsely assumed Kai was completely defenseless and immediately made a move. Suddenly, a massive spirit demon materializes right behind him. Panic sets in as he questions why a deadly monster has breached their family property. Ignoring his alarm, Duma physically manifests and declares that it is finally time for him to understand his true potential. She places a hand on his head, sending a scorching rush of energy coursing through his entire body. She explains that utilizing sorcery normally requires carving specific magical formulas into one's flesh. To bypass this, she directly pours the knowledge of a powerful lightning technique, Raikou, into his mind and commands him to defeat the approaching beast. Still clinging to his recent medical diagnosis, Kai desperately argues that he lacks the magic to execute the spell. As the monstrous spirit lunges forward, Duma harshly taunts him. She questions if his fierce vow to protect his parents, the very willpower that effortlessly repelled her own demonic domination, was just empty words. Struck by her sharp realization, Kai clenches his teeth and abandons all his excuses. Driven by his burning desire to protect what is precious to him, he extends his hand toward the beast. With absolute conviction, he unleashes the lightning technique. A blinding burst of raw electrical energy erupts from his palm, completely obliterating the spirit demon from existence. Watching the devastating display, Duma laughs at the absurdity of the doctors claiming he has no talent. Acknowledging his truly immeasurable power, she proudly vows to witness his inevitable rise as an unprecedented exorcist. Shortly after the blast, Akihiko and several other exorcists gather at the devastated site. Examining the footprints, they confirm a spirit demon broke in but are completely baffled by the sheer scale of the destruction, finding it hard to believe a single monster caused it. Hidden safely behind a nearby tree, Kai and Duma secretly observe the investigation. Duma playfully pokes the boy, questioning why he hides his overwhelming abilities from his parents. Kai frantically shushes her, explaining that revealing his true power would cause a massive, unwanted uproar. Stealthily, Kai slips away from the scene. However, unbeknownst to him, Akihiko easily spots his son sneaking off. Smiling to himself, the father realizes the boy is harboring a monumental level of power he never anticipated. Later at home, Kai paces anxiously outside. Duma teases him for leaving the scene if he was just going to worry about the investigation anyway. Their banter is interrupted when Akihiko approaches, pretending to be oblivious and asks if his son heard the massive explosion in the yard. Feigning ignorance, Kai denies knowing anything about it. Using the alarming incident as a catalyst, his parents declare that the danger has crept far too close to home. Despite his recent zero magic measurement, they ask for his ultimate resolve, announcing that his special exorcist training will begin immediately. A few days later, Kai stands nervously in the family's spacious private dojo. Duma floats beside him, highly impressed that the famous exorcist family has such a grand training facility right inside their home. Noticing the boy's unusual silence, she asks why he is so anxious about finally living out his dream. Before he can fully explain, Akihiko enters the hall accompanied by a new face. He proudly introduces the woman as Kagami, his son's official new exorcist instructor. Akihiko explains that finding a tutor capable of drawing out Kai's hidden potential was incredibly difficult. However, he specifically sought out Kagami because of her rare experience in teaching vessel children. Before leaving the dojo, his father hands him a small lucky charm, explaining it is proof that he is always watching over his son. Once they are alone, Duma teasingly asks if the boy is sad his daddy left, but Kai ignores her, stealing his resolve to begin his training. However, when he turns to his new instructor, he is completely bewildered to find Kagami prostrating on the floor in a perfect deep bow. She nervously asks him to treat her well, bizarrely offering herself entirely as a human sandbag for his punching and kicking practice. Extremely confused by her submissive behavior, Kai politely asks her to raise her head. He clarifies that he genuinely wants to learn how to become an exorcist from the ground up and respectfully requests that she teach him the basics. Hearing his polite request, Kagami is caught completely off guard and accidentally blurts out that he really is a cursed child. Shocked by her own slip-up, she quickly covers her mouth and frantically apologizes for using such a highly discriminatory term. Internally, she spirals into an absolute panic. Due to severe past trauma working with vessel children, she views them as terrifying, unpredictable monsters, leaving her utterly terrified of her polite new student. Still deeply traumatized by the unspeakable humiliation she endured from vessel children in the past, Kagami mentally braces herself. Knowing that her new student harbors the supreme demon god, Dauma, she vows to keep her guard up so she can fulfill the true hidden purpose of her assignment. Pushing her fears aside, she pulls out an instructional board to formally explain the three core principles of an exorcist: body, technique, and mind. She explains that body focuses on fundamental martial arts to build necessary stamina. Technique refers to transforming magic into one of the five elements: wind, fire, earth, lightning, or water. Finally, mind involves rare, highly specialized moves that directly shape the user's soul. Because the boy's magic measurement was officially recorded as 0, she gently notes that he will strictly focus on physical martial arts, for now, as the other principles require active magic to manifest. When she asks if he has any questions, Kai excitedly raises his hand and requests a live demonstration of elemental magic. Hesitant but willing to indulge him, Kagami holds out her hand and mutters a spell. A bright, flickering flame instantly materializes on her palm. Completely fascinated by the display, the boy inspects her hand from every angle, genuinely amazed to see real fire magic up close. Suddenly, Duma manifests beside him, loudly mocking the boy for being so impressed by a tiny flame when he recently obliterated a massive monster with a single lightning strike. She teases him, asking if he is simply too scared of failing to try using the magical formula she already carved into his body. Annoyed by her constant pestering, Kai accidentally snaps back at her out loud, explicitly saying her name. Catching the demonic name, Kagami stares at him in wide-eyed suspicion. Realizing his massive blunder, he desperately tries to cover it up by enthusiastically asking how he can perform the fire technique himself. Kagami instructs the boy to wait while she retrieves a specific guidebook for learning jujutsu. Presenting a text called The Book of Art, she explains that he does not actually need to read it. Simply touching the cover transfers the magical formula directly into his body. From there, he must rely on rigorous mental image training to successfully activate the spell. She warns that the process is incredibly difficult, noting that lacking the natural aptitude for a specific technique means it might never activate regardless of his effort. Remembering how Duma previously forced a formula into his mind, Kai realizes this is the standard learning method and sees a perfect opportunity to impress the demon. He touches the book, feeling the magical knowledge immediately flow into him. Kagami reveals the formula is for the same firefly light she demonstrated earlier. Smug and determined to prove his talent, Kai extends his hand and confidently commands the fire to ignite. But absolutely nothing happens. Duma bursts into laughter, mercilessly mocking his failed attempt to show off. Deeply embarrassed, Kai begs his instructor for a trick to make it work. However, even after hours of practicing the exact same jujutsu technique, his palm remains completely devoid of fire. Exhausted and impatient, he interrupts Kagami's attempt to end the training session, stubbornly refusing to quit, despite fearing he completely lacks magical talent. Seeing his frustration, Kagami gently reassures him. She explains that mastering a first technique takes a considerable amount of time for anyone, let alone a vessel child. She notes that it is completely normal for the process to take days, weeks, or even months depending on the spell's difficulty. Surprised by the realistic timeline, Kai realizes his few hours of practice are nothing in the grand scheme of things. instantly renewing his fiery determination to train harder. Refusing to accept a timeline of several months, Kai insists on mastering the technique immediately. Thanking Kagami for her helpful tips, he politely suggests she go home so he can continue practicing alone late into the night. Suddenly, Kagami snaps. Pushed to her emotional limit, she angrily demands that he stop pretending to be a normal, polite student. Haunted by severe trauma, she reveals that every Vessel child she previously tutored treated humans like disposable toys, subjecting her to cruel torment and violence under the guise of training. Expecting the exact same abuse, she bitterly accuses him of playing a sick joke just to mess with her. Shocked by her heartbreaking confession, Kai fiercely denies the accusation. He assures her that his mind has not been taken over and explains his true motivation for training. He shares that his parents' unwavering love and protection feel like an absolute miracle, leaving him terrified of ever losing them. Driven by the fear of repeating past tragedies, he vows to become strong enough to protect his family. Looking his terrified instructor in the eye, he earnestly promises to shield her from any unreasonable evil as well. Just then, Duma physically manifests, playfully asking if she counts as one of those evils. Brushing the joke aside, she points out that mastering a basic jujutsu shouldn't take him this long. She hints at the secret to his power, asking him to carefully recall the exact emotion he felt when he successfully repelled her demonic possession, and when he unleashed the devastating lightning strike days earlier. Struck by a sudden epiphany, Kai realizes that his magic is directly fueled by his burning desire to protect others. Thanking Duma for the crucial advice, he asks his instructor to watch closely. Channeling his protective vow directly into his magical formula, he confidently commands the firefly light to activate. Instantly, a bright flame bursts to life in his palm. Watching him successfully and safely wield the fire art, Kagami is left completely speechless. Completely stunned, Kagami watches in sheer disbelief as the young boy masters a jujutsu technique in mere hours. Observing the bright flame closely, she realizes it contains absolutely no trace of demonic dark magic. Instead, she senses a familiar, pure energy radiating from the fire. She is deeply shocked to recognize it as light magic, an ultra-rare attribute that only appears once every few hundred years, even among the 7 great exorcist families, and the only known force capable of directly opposing the darkness. A year passes, and a now 5-year-old Kai steadily improves his magic under Kagami's diligent instruction. During a sparring session, he successfully executes a water technique, earning praise from his tutor for his refined control. Suddenly, Duma telepathically intrudes on his thoughts, loudly pointing out his unusually gloomy expression. Startled by the sudden voice in his head, he hastily excuses himself to a quiet corner for a short break. Away from his instructor, Duma complains that his persistent foul mood takes the fun out of trying to possess him. Kai anxiously confides in her, admitting that despite learning various spirit arts over the past year, he feels completely stagnant. He worries that none of his current techniques come close to the raw power of the first lightning art he used. Recalling Kagami's earlier warning that he must be able to break through her defenses to survive actual combat, he severely doubts his ability to protect his family. The root of his agonizing anxiety stems from his previous life, where his parents tragically died right after his 6th birthday. Terrified that they are destined to meet the exact same fate in this world, he feels an immense, crushing pressure as the 1-year deadline rapidly approaches. Duma scoffs at his adult-sized worries. She points out that the greatest exorcist in history only mastered their first art at 4 years and 7 months old, making his early progress an unbelievable, luxurious head start. Changing the subject, Duma reminds him that today is his 5th birthday, and playfully warns him not to ruin the mood for the people who went through the trouble of preparing for it. Taking her words to heart, Kai walks home and opens the front door. He is instantly greeted by the cheerful pop of party poppers as Akihiko and his mother excitedly shout a happy birthday surprise. Surrounded by his family, Kai stares at his delicious birthday cake. Despite their cheerful efforts, he secretly struggles to get into a celebratory mood. However, Duma completely shatters his gloomy thoughts, impatiently demanding that he take a bite. He recalls how mind-blowing her reaction was when he tasted sweets for the first time last year. Giving in to her nagging, he takes a bite, sending the demon into a state of floating bliss. Still noticing his lingering sadness, she sharply scolds him. pointing out that his overwhelming fear of losing the future is completely blinding him to the precious moments right in front of him. Just then, his mother presents a special homemade meal, an adorable bear-shaped omelet rice. Looking at the slightly clumsy but lovingly crafted dish, Kai flashes back to his past life. He remembers how his previous mother was always too busy working to cook, usually leaving his meals to his grandmother except on his birthday. Touched by the incredible effort his new mother put into the meal, his gloom completely vanishes. He excitedly dives in, scarfing down the delicious food so quickly that he ends up choking. Amused by the boy's ravenous appetite, Akihiko chuckles knowingly while Kagami quickly steps in to pour him a soothing cup of hot tea. Mayumi warmly apologizes to Kagami for not noticing her sooner. She politely brushes it off, happy to help serve the meal since she arrived without a gift. Akihiko interjects to express his deep gratitude for her ongoing dedication. He explains that due to Kai's dangerous status as a vessel child, they have heavily isolated him from the outside world, making her companionship incredibly valuable. Kagami earnestly promises to continue watching over him. Their conversation is delightfully interrupted by the cries of Kai's baby sister, Meguru. Kai eagerly steps forward to hold her. Looking down at her tiny hands reaching for his face, he reflects on the bitter regrets of his past life. After their parents died previously, he and his sister grew estranged and constantly clashed. Smiling down at Meguru, he vows to change the future and be a proper, loving brother this time around. The joyful atmosphere shatters when Mayumi suddenly collapses. Akihiko rushes to his wife's side as she weakly complains of sudden dizziness and anemia. Secretly sensing something far more sinister at play, Kagami quickly urges him to take her straight to the hospital just in case. She offers to stay behind and protect the children in the meantime, which he quickly accepts. Elsewhere, a hidden spy reports back to their master. They confirm that Kai and Meguru are currently isolated in the family dojo with absolutely no servants nearby. Hearing this, the mysterious man smirks, highly pleased that his sinister plan is unfolding perfectly. On the other end of a secret phone line, a spy reports that the drug Mayumi ingested worked perfectly, causing only the intended temporary dizziness. The mysterious man on the phone laughs, dismissively noting that he wouldn't have cared even if the substance had been a lethal poison. He declares that the Shirakami family doesn't deserve a single moment of happiness and prepares to head to their location immediately. As the call ends, the perspective shifts back to the dojo, revealing that the traitorous informant is actually Kagami. Now, alone with the children, her helpful facade completely vanishes. She whispers to herself that the time has finally come for the family to experience the same crushing despair she felt years ago, vowing to make them understand her pain. Back inside the dojo, Kai gently coaxes his baby sister, Meguru, to crawl toward him. When she clumsily stumbles and starts crying, Duma manifests and notes how innocent the infant is. She jokingly claims that Kai lacked that innocence as a baby, teasing him for constantly wearing the grim, serious face of a monk. He defensively bickers back, blaming the demon's relentless possession attempts for his stressful demeanor as an infant. However, he quickly realizes she is just teasing him to distract him from worrying about his mother's sudden illness, and he sincerely thanks her for the much-needed comfort. Brushing off his gratitude, Duma sharply shifts the conversation to their current predicament. She warns Kai that she has sensed something deeply off about Kagami for a while, pointing out that the instructor's behavior has become blatantly suspicious since they were left alone. The demon deduces that Kagami is hiding dark, ulterior motives and suspects the sudden medical emergency that isolated them was entirely intentional. As Kai absorbs this grim warning, he calls out to Meguru to stop her from crawling too far. Suddenly, the heavy dojo gate ominously swings open. As the heavy dojo doors swing open, an older man steps inside. Kai instinctively pulls Meguru close, feeling an unsettling sense of familiarity upon seeing the intruder's face. Ignoring the children entirely, the man praises the instructor for her flawless execution of the plan, addressing her as Kagami. Dropping her friendly tutor facade in an instant, she respectfully bows and formally acknowledges the man as Lord Akaike. Bewildered by the sudden betrayal and the name change, Kai demands to know who the stranger is. Akaike completely disregards the boy's confusion. Instead, he openly admits that his spy informed him of the child's unprecedented condition, noting his absolute disbelief that the boy has somehow avoided falling under Duma's demonic control. Hearing his most closely guarded secret spoken aloud, Kai freezes in shock, frantically wondering how this dangerous intruder knows about the demon god sealed inside his body. Staring at the intruder, Kai suddenly recognizes him as Akaika, the elder from one of the 7 great exorcist families who was present on the day he was born. Without a shred of hesitation, the ruthless man declares that the boy must be disposed of. Duma urgently screams for the child to get back, just as the elder unleashes a massive wave of power, violently throwing Kai across the room. Following her employer's orders, Kagami also prepares to strike, leaving the young boy completely bewildered and heartbroken by his trusted teacher's sudden betrayal. Amidst the chaos, little Meguru bursts into tears and begins crawling toward her injured brother. Realizing that staying near her will only put the infant in the crossfire, Kai attempts to distance himself. However, to his absolute horror, Akaiki mercilessly targets the crying baby instead. Desperate to save her, the young boy instantly casts a protective flame art over his sister, just as the elder unleashes a devastating fire vortex that shatters the dojo windows. As the thick smoke clears, the boy is seen shielding the infant securely beneath his own battered body. Unfazed by the boy's heroic defense, the cruel elder threatens to eliminate them both at once. Duma frantically warns Kai to get up, cautioning that another direct hit will be completely fatal. Paralyzed by the terrifying memories of his previous life's sudden, unreasonable death, his body refuses to move despite his desperate internal commands. Just as the elder prepares a lethal finishing blow, Kagami unexpectedly steps between them. She firmly questions her employer, warning him that attempting to murder the children wildly deviates from their original mission of merely assessing the boy's status. Standing her ground, Kagami passionately confesses her true feelings to her employer. She admits that while monitoring Kai for the past year, she constantly battled her own trauma, repeatedly forcing herself to view the boy as a monstrous threat, harboring Duma. However, she firmly states that she can no longer deny the truth. Pointing out that not a single disaster has occurred since the boy's birth, she insists he is not a dangerous heretic, but a miraculously kind and humble child. Completely unlike the terrifying vessel children of her past, she declares that the boy might actually be an unprecedented savior. Akaiki listens to her passionate defense with a cold, dismissive smirk, utterly uninterested in her sentimental realization. Declaring that he no longer cares who or what the boy is, the ruthless elder instantly unleashes a massive flame vortex. Kagami frantically attempts to block the attack with a water technique, but her defense is far too flimsy. Breaking through the waterfall barrier in a flash, Akaike delivers a brutal punch to her face, sending her crashing violently to the ground. Horrified to see his beloved instructor struck down, Kai screams her name and desperately rushes to her side. Completely unfazed by the boy's distress, Akaike channels his immense magical energy and casts a devastating inferno art. As a terrifying ring of fire erupts and begins furiously revolving around the entire room, the elder coldly threatens to incinerate the traitorous instructor right alongside the children. Akaike ruthlessly condemns Kai as a dangerous heretic and Kagami as a traitor, declaring that they both deserve to be reduced to ashes. He unleashes a terrifying hellfire technique, causing the flames to grow dangerously large. Recognizing the lethal threat, Kagami bravely steps in front of the young boy and casts a water volley art, launching spheres of water to intercept the raging inferno. Unimpressed, the cruel elder mocks her efforts. He reminds her that she is merely a Class 2 exorcist, while he boasts the overwhelming power of a Class 4 exorcist and the head of his family, making her resistance entirely futile. Before she could react, Akaike traps her hands using a fiery wax restraint technique. Remembering her submissive behavior during training, he sadistically mocks her, treating her like a literal sandbag as he delivers a series of cruel, punishing strikes. Trembling while tightly shielding Meguru, Kai desperately begs the elder to stop. He pleads that if the man simply wants to eliminate a cursed vessel child, taking his life should be enough, urging him to leave his innocent instructor alone. Bursting into sinister laughter, Akaike reveals his true, twisted motives. He openly confesses that the boy's status as a vessel child and the supposed threat of an evil spirit are nothing but convenient excuses. His actual goal is to mercilessly punish the boy's father, Akihiko. The elder admits to harboring a deep, petty resentment because Akihiko married Mayumi, the woman Akaike had planned to take as his own wife. Driven by intense jealousy, he gleefully hoped the fatal curse of bearing a vessel child would kill Mayumi, and he is absolutely furious that she somehow survived. Driven into an unhinged frenzy of jealousy, Akaike bitterly complains about how deeply unfair it is that his rival, Akihiko, gained everything: a beautiful wife in Mayumi, a loving family, and incredible talent, without ever losing anything in return. Convinced his twisted logic perfectly justifies stealing away at least one of his rival's most treasured possessions, the elder launches a fiery prison technique at the young boy. Reacting quickly, Kai casts a flowing water art to intercept the strike, but the sheer force of the attack violently knocks him backward. Frustrated by the resistance and disgusted by what he considers a boring use of Duma's power, Akaike loses his patience. Abandoning his original plan to torture them slowly, he begins gathering a massive amount of fiery energy, intending to incinerate them all at once. As the heat intensifies, Kai is paralyzed once again by the lingering trauma of his past life death, his body completely freezing up in terror. Sensing his helpless panic, Duma mentally reaches out with a tempting offer. She promises that if he completely surrenders his body to her demonic control, she will effortlessly reduce the Elder to ashes in an instant. Listening to Meguru's terrified cries and hearing Kagami weakly beg him to run away, Kai heavily considers the demon's deal. He knows she is telling the truth and could end the nightmare immediately. However, he ultimately refuses. He points out that not only is he worried about her permanently stealing his body, but he also knows that the demon will eventually leave him one day. He realizes that if he relies on her power now instead of conquering his own trauma, he will never be truly strong enough to protect his parents on his own. Steeling his resolve, Kai forces himself to stand up and face his paralyzing fear. Akaike loudly mocks the boy's bravery as a pathetic bluff, sadistically claiming that his obvious terror will only make his unsightly death more entertaining. Screaming out to his absent rival that they are finally equal, the elder unleashes his devastating great hellfire. Refusing to let his family be destroyed, Kai fiercely defies the incoming inferno. To the villain's absolute shock, the young boy miraculously casts a divine exorcist technique known as Hakujutsu, conjuring a brilliant wall of pure light that perfectly blocks the raging flames. Looking at the glowing barrier, Kai recalls a past lesson where Kagami explained the nature of Hakujutsu. She elaborated that it is an advanced technique allowing a user to physically shape their own soul using the mana dwelling within them, creating a uniquely tailored weapon. However, because this form is entirely permanent once created, users cannot simply force its awakening. Instead, they must wait to be naturally guided by their true feelings and the core of their soul. Snapping back to the present, Akaike is utterly bewildered that a mere child could manifest such a complex divine technique. More shockingly, he senses an entirely unfamiliar energy radiating from the barrier. Lying injured on the floor, Kagami smiles triumphantly. She realizes the elder has finally noticed that the boy's Hakujutsu does not belong to the standard 5 elements. Instead, it is the legendary light attribute, a miraculous darkness-opposing power once wielded by a great hero of the past. Examining his newly formed soul weapon, Kai realizes it is literally just a giant wall of light. Duma bursts into hysterical laughter, mercilessly mocking the boy for manifesting such a plain, defensive ability fit only for a background character. Kai angrily snaps at the demon to shut up, though he secretly agrees that a simple wall severely lacks flashy appeal. Seeing his embarrassment, Kagami warmly praises the shield, explaining that its sturdy shape perfectly reflects his deep, unwavering desire to protect his loved ones. Touched by her words, he respectfully calls her his teacher and thanks her. Ashamed of her betrayal, she claims she is no longer fit for that title, but Kai firmly insists she is. He confidently asks her to watch him demonstrate the true results of her training. Furious at the heartwarming exchange, Ekayike loudly scoffs, warning the boy not to get cocky just because he managed to awaken a soul technique. Duma smugly remarks that practical combat experience is the true difference between life and death. Frustrated by his inability to pierce the light barrier, Akaike unleashes another flame attack, foolishly assuming the Hakujutsu can only defend from a single direction. Hoping to exploit this perceived opening, the elder quickly dashes to the boy's blind spot and throws a fierce punch. To his absolute shock, he violently bounces off another invisible barrier and crashes to the ground. Panicking, Akaike scrambles backward, only to hit yet another wall. He quickly realizes that Kai has effortlessly trapped him inside a completely inescapable cylindrical soul prison. Duma laughs at the villain's sheer panic, mocking his foolish assumption that a wall can only be used for protection, when a little imagination turns it into a perfect trap. Desperate and terrified, Akaike watches in horror as Kai marches toward him with a raised fist. The cowardly elder frantically tries to use his political status, warning the boy that striking the head of his family will turn the entire global nobility against him. Unfazed by the political threats, Kai heavily punches the villain, knocking him out cold. He easily brushes off the warning, playfully noting that no one expects a 5-year-old to think rationally anyway. Watching the incredible display, Kagami proudly praises her student. She points out that Kai flawlessly used a lightning jujutsu to enhance his physical strength for the final blow, proving the amazing results of his grueling physical training. Filled with awe, she warmly declares that he is no longer just a cursed vessel child, but a true, proper exorcist, entirely certain that he will grow into someone greater than she can ever imagine. Meanwhile, in an unknown location, a mysterious young girl sits quietly on a sofa. A woman standing by the window informs her about Kai, letting the girl know in advance that he will be arriving there soon. The woman notes that the boy is a vessel child, just like her, perfectly setting the stage for their inevitable meeting. Following the epic battle, Kai returns to his regular training, attempting to quietly meditate in a room full of other children. However, a profoundly bored Duma intentionally pesters him to get a reaction. Pushed to his absolute limit, the young boy accidentally shouts at the demon out loud. Assuming the cursed vessel child is dangerously lashing out, a nearby teacher immediately rushes over in sheer panic, nervously apologizing and urging him to simply take his time. Amused by the adult's terror, Duma questions why the boy isn't furious about being unfairly confined to this facility, leaving Kai silently conflicted. Meanwhile, at the Spirit Tribunal organization, Akihiko furiously argues with an elite judge named Kurokawa. He demands to know why his son was placed on strict probation when he was clearly the victim of an assassination attempt. Kurokawa calmly explains that Akaike entirely fabricated his testimony, falsely claiming the 5-year-old aggressively attacked him, using Duma's demonic power. Although Kagami truthfully testified in the boy's defense, the judge admits that the elder's petty, jealousy-driven motive is far too vulgar and repulsive for the official council to actually believe. Despite dismissing the official testimony, Kurokawa privately confesses to Akihiko that he secretly hopes Kagami is right about the boy being a miraculous savior, noting that Japan hasn't suffered a single major disaster since the child's birth. 5 years ago, the judge genuinely wants to believe in his unprecedented potential. However, bound by the strict laws of the tribunal, he firmly refuses to overturn the council's legal judgment. Back at the confinement facility, Duma casually brushes off the political injustice. She points out to Kai that despite officially being placed on house arrest, having a decent degree of freedom to roam inside the large compound is actually a pretty good blessing. Accepting his house arrest at the Jakugo Institute, Kai acknowledges that the facility staff gives him freedom mostly out of sheer terror. With his 6th birthday, the exact age his past life parents died, rapidly approaching, he resolves to carefully make the most of his time. Suddenly, his thoughts are violently interrupted by a harsh voice. He watches in disgust as a cruel instructor named Hyu-do mercilessly beats a young girl named Ame Ginzan with a wooden stick, falsely accusing her of rebellious behavior. Even when another instructor begs him to stop, the abusive man refuses to relent. Sickened by the sight, Kai desperately wants to intervene, but recalls a strict warning from his father. Akihiko previously urged him to behave and get out of the institute as quickly as possible. Most importantly, he was strictly forbidden from using his own light magic, since his official mana capacity was recorded as 0, revealing his true power would instantly brand him as a dangerous heretic. Frustrated by these restrictions, Kai feels helpless until Doma furiously declares her intent to kill the annoying instructor with a deadly curse. Realizing a clever loophole, Kai stops the demon from killing the man but agrees to use her terrifying power to scare him. Since his father only forbade his own exorcist magic, Relying on his known status as a cursed vessel child to leak demonic mana is a perfectly natural excuse. Willingly releasing Duma's mana for the very first time, he carefully limits the flow to a mere trickle. Imagining a slightly dripping faucet, he exerts immense focus to prevent the demon god from instantly taking over his mind. Meanwhile, Yudu continues his cruel assault, enraged that the young girl dares to talk back to him. Just as he raises his stick to strike her again, a terrifying, heavy pressure violently forces him backward. Horrified, the abusive instructor stares helplessly into the distance. Manifested entirely from the tiny trickle of demonic mana, a massive, ominous gate wrapped in heavy iron chains suddenly towers before him, leaving the cruel man completely paralyzed with fear. Hyudu screams in absolute terror, frantically pointing at the massive chained gate and demanding to know when it appeared. The other instructor is completely baffled, staring at the empty air and stating that there is nothing there. Paralyzed by fear, the abusive man insists that something sinister is glaring directly at him, screaming that he can hear it violently trying to break out from behind the iron doors. Ignoring his colleagues' confused attempts to calm him down, he staggers backward and cowardly flees the area in a blind panic, leaving the rest of the class utterly bewildered. Watching the bully run away, Duma scoffs and complains that her target's mind was pathetically weak. Kai is genuinely impressed, praising the demon god for possessing such a highly useful and precise curse that only affects a single target without alerting anyone else. Unaccustomed to receiving earnest gratitude, Duma gets visibly flustered. Calling him a courageous little brat, she quickly vanishes to hide her unexpected embarrassment. Relieved that the curse did not cause a major scene, Kai assumes he successfully avoided drawing any unwanted attention to himself. However, his relief shatters when he suddenly realizes Ame Ginzan is sitting right beside him, staring intently. Jolted by her silent proximity, he anxiously wonders if she somehow sensed the demonic aura and resolves to maintain strict distance from her. Unfortunately, his plan is ruined the very next day when the gym instructor randomly partners Kai directly with AME for a mandatory game of kickball. Out in the garden, the gym instructors announce a simple kickball warm-up. Because they are the only two children left without partners, Kai and Amy Gonzan are awkwardly forced to pair up. Attempting to be polite, she apologizes in advance for her supposed lack of skill and softly kicks the ball toward him. However, the ball launches forward with blistering, superhuman speed, completely blowing past him and violently smashing into a nearby tree with a loud spark. Shocked by the sheer force of the impact, Kai realizes there is absolutely no way she is an untrained amateur. Determined to survive the exercise peacefully, he lightly bounces the ball back, hoping the first kick was just a fluke. Instead, Amy returns it with the exact same terrifying power. Realizing she is a highly trained fighter, Kai taps into the grueling physical training he endured under Kagami. The two children lock into an intense, lightning-fast rally, kicking the ball back and forth with such overwhelming force that the panicked instructors scramble to figure out how to safely stop them. Later in the dining hall, Kai happily enjoys his meal, while playfully ignoring Duma's desperate, nagging demands for a taste. Despite the delicious food, he notices that all the other children are actively avoiding his table. He assumes his extreme isolation is due to his terrifying status as a vessel child, which was only made more obvious by his freakish athletic display during the warm-up. Suddenly, Aimee breaks his isolation by walking over and asking to sit right beside him. Startled by the awkward timing, Kai nervously tries to think of a safe conversation starter to break the ice. Before he can even speak, she immediately cuts to the chase. Staring directly at him, she bluntly asks if he is the vessel child, harboring the legendary demon god, Duma. Aimee bluntly asks if Kai is currently being possessed by the demon god, or if he is actually Duma in human form. Kai vaguely dodges the question, leaving him puzzled by her fearless curiosity. Apologizing for the strange interrogation, she reveals a shocking truth. She is also a vessel child. She explains that because she recently turned 7 years old, her role is officially over. The snow demon possessing her has finally entered a dormant state and was safely cast out of her body. Hearing this, Kai realizes that the Jakugo Institute is actually a probation facility for former vessel children. Duma scoffs at the concept of probation, pointing out that the staff's abusive behavior is rooted in deep, irrational prejudice. She explains that former vessel children are cruelly branded as former fiends and face severe discrimination for the destructive actions they committed while possessed, despite sacrificing their childhoods to quell the spirit's anger. Realizing that Ame has endured this unfair hatred for years, Kai feels a deep sense of camaraderie and vows to better understand her struggles. Opening up to him, Ame shares that the spirit who possessed her was a beautiful snow demon named Asane. Duma immediately recognizes the name, proudly noting that the powerful ice spirit is a legendary member of Japan's prestigious Eight Pillars. Their bonding is suddenly interrupted when the facility instructors urge them to finish eating and hurry to their afternoon classes. However, looking at the group of teachers, Kai senses something off and notices that the abusive instructor, Hugh, is suspiciously missing. Unbeknownst to the children, the cruel man is hiding just behind the dining hall doors. Shrouded in a terrifying dark energy, he obsessively mutters Asane's name, violently whispering that the snow demon belongs to him.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand, I know I walked away. Had to find the person I'd become.